And here is the harsh reality that was waiting around the corner. Everyone plays computer games with gigantic enthusiasm, which is to be expected. But they didn't expect at all that a revolution would take place in the world of games. Everything would become like in reality. Beautiful girls' and boys' dreams would come true. There was only one key to this mysterious world, or rather, a helmet that immerses you in this reality, in this wonderful world. Only everyone can get it by giving only contact information. Something is definitely not right here. And here is our main character, Glenn. He suspects that something is wrong with this helmet, but nothing stopped him from trying it out. This new, beautiful, wonderful and mysterious world is called the underground. What is wrong with it? In order to find the answer to this question, Glenn went here. Explosions in the new world are already commonplace. The hero from the start tries to find the best equipment and get a lot of benefits from here. And here he is in full growth. 1 kilometer away from the newcomer's village, he is fighting with local monsters. But the weapons from that starting zone did not provide the necessary resources at all. The spirit of poverty, a good monster for a beginner, has a large amount of resources. But if no one is hunting for it, it can only become a trap. Glenn has a diamond eye for such riches. He will not give a chance for the spirit to escape from him. He decided to use enhancement for his very weak sword, which has the attribute of fire. It seemed to Glenn that it was impudent that in front of him, such an experienced player, there was such a profit, a treasure that all the players were chasing after at the beginning. The spirit did not even give resistance. He died the death of a beggar. With him there should be many resources that will help everyone. Such monsters are not even a small thing for our hero. He cuts off their lives with one swing of his blade. The ghost had no purpose at all to mock the experienced heroes. He is just a spirit of poverty. Just a spirit of poverty. Our swordsman knew about this. But he was tormented by melancholy, and he decided to kill the poor ghost, who had not done anything bad to him. True, this spirit can definitely be called a treasure. Behind its soul there may be a lot of gold and rare crystals. Everyone will chase after these. But the achievement for killing a certain number of these spirits is not inspiring. Now our hero will lose a considerable amount of gold for killing a beggar. Still, the hero lost his vigilance. How could such a treasure turn out to be a trap? Glenn was attacked from the side with a hidden attack. Of course, he could not expect this. He couldn't believe such impudence. The swordsman hates such scoundrels who make hidden attacks. He was seriously injured, and besides, it was an ambush by other players who were clearly hunting for that spirit. And here they are. The whole team decided to attack a single player who was clearing the territory of monsters. Only he was lucky, and bad weather follows such luck. Such riches clouded the mind of our hero. The enemies did not even inspire him with any danger. Fire spells cost as much as 50 gold, and then a valuable amethyst fell out. But it is unlikely that he will be allowed to take such treasures so easily. The scoundrels looked out for our hero for quite a long time in order to take all his equipment, for which they praised him for his bravery. The worst kind of players, they hunt other weaker ones for gold and equipment. This type of game was very valuable, since in just a couple of days they reached level 10. These players are marked in red for a reason. Killing a real player is marked in this way. Our swordsman is in great danger. For such wealth, these 5 will fight among each other. It's not for nothing that they are here. Only one thing they did not expect. Their prey would not tolerate such impudence. He uses a smoke bomb and tries to escape from these scoundrels. The freaks did not expect this at all, since for them to spend 100 gold to buy smoke was something crazy. But this gave Glenn a chance to escape. He would be able to take all his resources without giving a single gram of gold to these hunters. Still, it was not so colorful. Today was definitely not his day, since the enemy was ready for the enemies to escape and prepared the shooter, who now punched the swordsman through. Things were bad. This attack targeted the enemy's weak points, pierced the chest and caused gigantic damage. Among these hunters was a competent marksman who used his special skill that wounds straight to the heart, an excellent talent for an archer. This could not be expected. The archer has already received his own special skill, for which he needs to reach an impossible level. But this is the easiest thing for such scoundrels to achieve. Even so, they belittle our hero, despite the fact that they can only kill weak newcomers in droves and take all their resources. Such players had great cruelty. They did not care about mercy. The main thing was resources and a valuable amethyst, which is difficult to find even for such scoundrels. Our hero is not going to tolerate such impudence. As soon as he becomes stronger, his main goal will be revenge on these freaks, since Glenn spent several days obtaining equipment. But it was already quite late, the eyelids were getting heavy, and upon death, the pain from the game was transferred to reality. Yet dying here is both painful and harmful to development, since after death you won't be able to play for an hour. This just freed up time to do important things, eat, relax and wash things. Something went wrong. He woke up under the beauties who call him master. They have been waiting for his awakening for a long time. How he found himself in this paradise. Such beauties were waiting for him, who monitored his condition, and eventually achieved his awakening. Recently he was in his one-room apartment, which he was renting, and here beautiful girls were wiggling his toes. He could not have expected this. Moreover, the devil personally gave him a new hairstyle. In the reflection, he did not recognize himself at all. He should have woken up in his apartment, but he turned out to be a local gentleman who was being looked after. As expected, he was scared to death about how he got here, who he was and where he was, what was really going on here. One indignation from the gentleman, and all the girls knelt down. They thought that the hairstyle was not to his liking and they would immediately fix everything. Now everything was clear. He ended up in the body of a certain king, was in his castle, yet he did not die in the game, but was reborn in a new appearance. It was a real jackpot. He became the boss of the whole game. With such power he can move mountains. What is his power in this world now? The Lord of Hell understands his capabilities. At his feet lay magnificent beauties who would obey his every whim. Our hero doesn't even think about hesitating. His nature demands to see these beauties without unnecessary clothes. But he just can't guess what exactly she should take off. His disgusting fantasy played out to the maximum. Realizing that the sensations in the game will be similar to real ones, he cannot even imagine what feelings he will experience in this game. But suddenly something more interesting attracted his attention. He saw real luxury, which even distracted him from the beautiful devils. But the subject of his attention turned out to be a girl more beautiful than everyone else. She came to report on the meeting of the 4 spirit emperors, who came to report on something very important. Then he realized that he wouldn't be able to find such girls during the day. But he wouldn't be able to spend time with them, since he had to go to a meeting. But in fact, he doesn't even know what report he's talking about. Glenn was the first to get here, and he's already being bombarded with the responsibilities of a ruler. He shows with all his appearance that he doesn't understand one bit what is happening to him now, how he got here and who he has become. And here is the secret plan. The local ruler is a developer who keeps a report on how ordinary people play here. An ordinary computer character could not say this. Behind the control of this girl there was a real person who was like the secretary of this boss. Sometime later, Glenn arrived at the meeting. They were met by a kid at the entrance, who announced the arrival of important guests. Glenn and Amelie, that was the name of his partner, arrived in the room where even the spirit emperors stand up at the sight of the ruler. They took their places. From now on the meeting can begin. Our hero did not like the atmosphere here, as if the air was heavier than usual, or there was a lump in his throat. Amelie noticed that it was not the devil emperors who arrived here at all. Their place was assistants, which was not the case. Our heroine was very interested. The assistant to the Eastern Emperor justified his master by saying that he had a lot of work, but the Lord of Hell always sits idle. She showed her indignation. Amelie would never allow some assistant to address the Lord of Hell himself like that. Glenn at this time competently showed the appearance that he understood what he was doing here, although, deep in his soul, he was telling them to stop quarreling and explain what was happening here. Whether the assistants were electrocuted, such a reaction was not typical for their old ruler. The assistant to the Eastern Emperor King, who dared our hero, was very surprised by such a calm reaction from the ruler. He didn't even look like himself. He became more calculating, which means he needs to warn. Then a screen appeared before the eyes of the ruler and his assistants. It showed the very players who took part in this mystical game, which hid many secrets. Incredible. No, this cannot be. This game had strange things for a reason. The players actually ended up in the afterlife. But they didn't know it at all. They received fatigue instead of pain. With any injury, the player loses energy, which is absorbed by the underworld. But everything is regulated so that the person does not spend too much and nothing threatens his life. From the first level of the underworld, monsters according to the progression system increase their combat ability, and they are constantly reborn in the well of continuous rebirth. Over the 3 months of the game, Only the slightest part of them penetrated the third layer of the underworld. What will happen beyond it, one can only guess. Amelie asked King to report on the situation in the first 5 layers of the underworld, as they are under the influence of the Eastern Devil Emperor. King did not know where to start. He asked the Emperor what could bother him in the first place. But he was silent about what question to ask this assistant, what might be of interest to the real Lord of Hell and the developer of this devilish game. All attention was focused on him. Only he was silent. Such an influential devil sits and is silent at the meeting. There is nothing good in this. King felt this pressure. He knows his master well and understands that in this way he belittles him. But he has absolutely no idea who is hiding under the mask. This is the view through the eyes of King. He is the devil himself, but in front of him he sees Satan, whose eyes shine like candles in a temple. His heart began to beat faster and faster. But in fact, Glenn couldn't even say a word, as he felt much more pressure on himself. He sat at the same table, not with fictional characters. In front of them there were real demons, and the ruler himself is not the boss, but in himself a living villain, Satan, Lucifer. Glenn understands that he was in the wrong place and at the wrong time, which suddenly gave him such power. But Amelie was also worried about this silence. Whether her ruler was tired, something was wrong with him, she feels. King was very frightened. He was in a hurry to leave here, under the pretext that the ruler did not need anything, and his emperor ordered him to go to the Peach Valley for the harvest. Suddenly the devil's silence stopped. He was interested in the question that newcomers could not be in danger, since their energy was taken in small quantities. It was not for nothing that the assistant to the Eastern Emperor was so frightened. This question shocked him. Since he was least expecting it, he would not just run away in the middle of the meeting. And here is the problem itself. The players should not be in danger. But in the end they fell into oblivion. Many fell asleep and did not wake up. Only by taking a large amount of energy can this be achieved. It was written all over his face. He was clearly in an uncomfortable position, since his excuses sounded too stupid. You see, the Lord developed the game, the Lord is to blame. But Amelie well noticed that it is under the authority of the Eastern Emperor that all the players are. Did the assistant really dare to disobey his emperor and ruler? This was where King's patience ended. He was even bold enough to climb onto the negotiating table with his own feet. After all, he is a general, a demon of destruction, and some maid does not dare raise her voice against him. She was accompanying the Lord of Hell. This behavior caused Glenn and Amelie to be indignant. How dare he behave like that? The ruler's eyes shone in the darkness of the room. He saw with his own eyes the danger in front of him. The demon general had already attacked Amelie. At this time Glenn saw all his weaknesses and strengths. The demon lord has too much power. Still, Amelie is not going to sit still when she and the ruler are attacked by this impudent person who does not fulfill his duties. So 2 incredible forces met, an ordinary maid of the Lord of Hell and the assistant of the demon emperor. Both have incomparable strength and power, hence the demonstration. Amelie's power turned out to be too great. She pinned the general to the table without any problems, and he couldn't even do anything. Fear and horror were written on his face. Death stood in front of his face. She ran her bloody claws across his face. Any minute she would plunge them very deeply. There was a terrifying cruelty hidden in such a beauty. King did not want such a death at all, but he could not do anything. Here the bishop decided to interrupt the meeting, thereby saving the life of a problematic assistant who was not bringing any benefit. He left the meeting, but the thought did not leave his mind that ordinary players were becoming victims of this ill-fated game, and others were in danger. Amelie is trying to keep up with her master, since he stopped the meeting too suddenly and rushed away from it. Glenn heard his maid's call, worried that he had more meetings scheduled or worse. But everything was much better. The beautiful Amelie extended her hand to him, and said something unimaginable to him. He needs to take a bath. But he can't even imagine with whom he will take a bath. The gates opened. The light was similar to heaven. Something angelic seemed to be shining through there. Beautiful views, as if there was no hell at all, tree petals, crumbling pink crowns. But even more beautiful were the girls who accompanied our hero in taking a bath. Despite all of them, they were devils, a paradise for a nerd. The girls decided to arrange a rest for their master. He could no longer stop the blood from his nose, since it was seething like boiling water. He did not understand why, instead of characteristics, they had certain numbers, like sizes. That's just what Suddenly one naked woman orders her partners to finally get to work on Glenn. Why are they standing still and doing nothing? It was our Amelie. She told her master to rest, since he had been working too much lately. No one would ever refuse such a beauty. As expected, the hero could not withstand such a blow. He is knocked out, blood is flowing in a stream, and yet only a few naked handsome men came out in front of him, and he himself is a lustful bastard. This goddess's towel came off with Glenn. His retinas would be burned if he saw her without anything. His eyes blurred, as if through glasses in the winter cold. Only silhouettes of beautiful forms were visible in front of him, divine contours that he would never meet. Well, he had already imagined how he would fulfill his dream with the most beautiful girls. But he woke up with new strength in a new game. This is the beginning of the incident that bothered Glenn. In front of us is his brother Woody. They were having a fairly ordinary conversation for nerds, and his dear friend just brought up the topic of this strange game that has captivated the whole world. Glenn was initially apprehensive about this game. After all, it was free. Something was definitely wrong with it. He tried to get it into this fool's head that this helmet might not be safe, but he didn't listen to him. Testing had begun, which means he couldn't be allowed to pass. Only a couple of days passed. Some child was being taken away in an ambulance. The mother was chasing the stroller, but it was unlikely that she could help. As it turned out, that child was Glenn's brother, who fell into oblivion, which our hero remembered at the meeting of emperors, but he did not get an exact answer. The doctor spoke only about bad news. The boy fell into an eternal sleep. They did not know what to do about it, but his mother told him not to play this ill-fated game. Glenn suddenly realized that his brother had been playing this horror game without a break, and ended up in a coma. He was tormented by the question of what was wrong with this game, so he set off to explore the evil world. With great drive and willpower, he set out to conquer this world. But he should be careful, since this game brings obvious death, and it seems to need to be avoided. Here it is, synchronization with the afterlife. At that time he did not know at all where he would end up, but nothing could stop him. The main thing was to save his brother. Now Glenn is very lucky. He got the information he needs most. Now he will be able to implement his plan to save his brother. He was already in the village of newcomers. The cards were revealed. It was not without reason that the players complained of fatigue after leaving the game, and some were less fortunate, and became hostages of this mysterious game. Suddenly he stopped. Something influenced his furious pressure. He simply disappeared. So that's the thing. He's worried about the fact that after death he wasn't returned to the real world. But that's not what should worry him at all. He blocked the path of a certain beauty. But this heroine is not here to waste time. She easily jumps over our Glenn, using a boost. Our hero will no longer have the opportunity to admire these views. But of course, he is surprised that she only owns such equipment in the village of beginners. With these boosts, she can surpass every player. That's just how she gets them. Our beauty was clearly not happy that our hero was standing in her way, as she was in a hurry. She was magnificent, like a ballerina fluttering in the air, incredibly strong and beautiful. She didn't care about obstacles, she strove forward, and the guys from the side discussed her incredible equipment, which you could get by throwing a lot of money here. Such things were a real shortage. Only 10 people on the entire server, who was this lovely girl, could afford them. But Glenn didn't care about what shoes she bought. He cares about what's under her skirt, a real bastard. But he couldn't think about it. He didn't have a lot of time either. He needed to save his brother as soon as possible. Otherwise it might be too late. Here is the first enemy on the way. A savage of the first level could not bring any harm to such an experienced player as our hero. The monster instantly lost his head. Glenn is like an executioner who whips the condemned with one stroke. Anyway, it was impossible to stay here for a long time. Glenn needed to hurry to the Peach Valley. But why? And the solution was clear. The Devil Emperor decided to send the Demon General King to the Peach Valley harvest. Just as our hero already guessed that Woody had fallen under his power and fell asleep. He was plunged into deep thought. He needed a quick boost to put all his strength on the general. With such information, he can achieve a lot. He just needs to gain strength in order to surpass. Having such information, he can do whatever he wants with King, since he doesn't even know about his existence. And our hero knows about all his plans. He can't save or quit the game, but whether that would be a downside is unknown. But definitely fighting crime sounds good. There was a roar from the side. All Glenn's pressure evaporated instantly. There should be a big brawl. The culprit for this noise was a beauty we knew earlier, who had already invested a huge amount of money in this game, and she was fighting with slime. The battle with these creatures was not easy for her. Sweat was running down her face. She was breathing harder and harder. The battle was too difficult. Our hero immediately recognized this girl. It was the same rich beauty. This game dares to take away a person's energy. And besides, it does not refuse the money of the victims who buy a one-way ticket. Even so, our rich princess does not show herself to be a fragile girl. She is here to take everything from this game, even paid resources and items. These monsters were called swamp demons. They could not be simply cut down. Their torch could not be extinguished so easily. Glenn has previously dealt with such creatures. He understands that she is unlikely to cope with them, since he himself did not know what to do with them when he first met them. Her name was Gina, a rich beauty who had a lot of equipment behind her, an incredible opportunity for Glenn to get money from her that he lacked. He was already thinking through a plan to cuddle up to her legs, thereby gaining greater opportunities for progress. For all this he needs to inspire confidence in himself, or make her his debtor. The situation was ideal for him. The rich beauty was surrounded by immortal enemies, and only he could help her. In previous battles, our hero was able to get an ice crystal. He didn't even dare to think that it would be useful to him, since such monsters only take ice attributes. He instantly moved to the monsters. Our hero's experience was great. Precisely because of this he can find benefit in every object, even the most useless. But suddenly, at the most inconvenient moment, he falls into the body of the ruler. Whether it was luck or not, something was wrong with this state. Their ruler fell into oblivion again, thereby greatly frightening all the maidservant girls. They apparently had been waiting for a long time for his awakening. He was interested in the fact that the emperors should have arrived a long time ago. He asked Amelie this question, but there was no good news. They had already left. This was very distasteful to Glenn, as if it was a rebellion on the part of the emperors, since no one was allowed to leave without his permission. But he could get even more information. The screams terrified the girls. They knelt down as soon as he began his indignation, yet his power was too great. There was one problem. Something was definitely wrong with this body. While the real ruler was sleeping, Glenn woke up in his body, since according to the girls he was at a meeting of emperors. Then he didn't care. He ordered his maids to continue to kneel, and he himself would go somewhere. They absolutely obey him. No one even dares to express their opinion. Glenn is very concerned about this state, the transfer of souls from one character to another, whether these heroines were involved in this. Meanwhile, the hero returned to his first character. Gina was still in great danger from these swamp monsters. The ice attribute came in handy. The swamp demons were cut off once and for all. The monsters became ice cubes. But all you need to know is the weak side of each creature in order to sting like a bee. Every monster became ice dust. Glenn in Gina's eyes was a magnificent ice prince, yet he managed to become her idol. She did not expect this from an ordinary player guy, since it took her, an incredibly rich woman, a very long time to do nothing. And Glenn in front does not look very impressive in front of her, just a couple of swings, and his target is saved from the bloodthirsty monsters. Everything was not so happy. The enhancement effect subsided, but there were still a lot of monsters, and thus they only became more furious. So they surrounded him. He no longer had any ice enhancements. Now he can show off like that in front of the beautiful Gina. After all, she loves to spectacularly fly over the guys and use her magnificent equipment to save Glenn. He opened his mouth wide again. He did not expect such determination from this girl, since she had recently fallen under the yoke of the creatures. Gina managed to save our hero, doing everything very beautifully. No one could compare with her in beautiful attacks, since she was like a butterfly fluttering on the battlefield. It can't be. This is an ice attack that can plunge all enemies into horror and nightmare. That crystal cost a fortune. Just using it on such weak monsters seemed like the most senseless waste of money, especially such ones. This is the secret of such power, money. The power of money. Glenn understands that even here material wealth helps a lot. Our heroine was more interested in the fact that her savior knew in advance about the weakness of the swamp demons. What was the secret of his knowledge? In that same village of newcomers, fictional characters sell information about monsters, how to defeat them, their weaknesses and strong abilities that need to be avoided. Our heroine did not go far. she had already bought this information, but she did not use it, and it was in vain. She continued to demand more and more advice from him, but not without reason, since in front of her was a truly experienced player who had a large number of battles behind him. The thing was that he didn't even buy this information. The seller gave him a little reading. He memorized every line of useful knowledge. Gina always spent money on such things, because she didn't even think that she would have to think about how much they would have. Strangely enough, all the power was stored in his head. All information became the strongest weapon. It's not for nothing that he sharpens his brain so that it can cut anything and everything. She thought he was too cool. His whole plan worked perfectly. She was literally on fire with such mental power. She was hooked. Time after time, he uses psychological tricks on her so that she always follows him, tries to stop him, so that their path goes back to back. It still worked. She had already fallen into Glenn's trap. After all, he is a genius and a scoundrel. The brain is truly his strongest weapon. She asked. She fell into the trap of this scoundrel. His actions are honed to perfection. He always knows how to communicate with girls, how to influence them, how to fool their brains. This is all our Glenn. The arrogant face of a freak. Everything went according to his plan. An incredible beauty, a rich woman. She can very well help in his progress. But she herself used her tricks with beauty and cuteness well to take such and such a player to her team. With all her appearance, she shows how much she wants to get him. The swordsman does not show his weak points. He continues to inspire her that she is nothing more than a burden, thereby destroying her beautiful weapon, her cuteness. He knows that she can be very useful. It is not for nothing that he will build a fool, and she even exceeded expectations. She bought everything in the rookie village, and some of the items were very strange. Another arrogant trick, dull eyes, a shining sparkle in them, a clamp to her chest, and the look that she wants with all her heart to get on his team. He is already starting to give in, and deep down she despises him, since no one has ever stood before her broke. His willpower is too great. Such psychological attacks no longer took him. He humiliated her in every possible way, and she could not answer him with anything, but somehow she fell on his hook. Still, their disputes were not so important. They needed to hurry to quickly gain strength, and then to the Peach Valley. But suddenly there was bad weather. Cracks appeared under your feet. What was it? An attack by an incredible enemy, or even worse. A beam of incredible magnitude rushed upward. Some incredible force was released in the middle of the forest, and woke up all its inhabitants. Gina couldn't even imagine what kind of power was released in that direction, whether it was a new enemy who was superior to everyone in strength, or a game event. But the swordsman probably recognized this glow. It was at this time, in this place, that something good was supposed to happen, since he smiled from ear to ear. Never will our hero rush so anxiously into a great release of energy. There was something incredible there. Something that he had been waiting for so long. His new partner did not understand at all what was happening, why the hell he was in such a hurry, as if he had broken free. In fact, he hoped that the only elite event at their level would take place in this place. And they definitely should not miss this, since it was a great chance to increase their level. All kinds of misunderstandings were visible on it, but it simply fell into the hands of a very arrogant player who is going to use her wealth. Since this event requires going to a large amount of equipment, that was not enough. At this time, in the vicinity of the legendary elite event, the first contenders for its capture have already appeared. A little more and our heroes will definitely be late. There was a certain smart guy on their team who would definitely run away from strong enemies, leaving his partners in trouble. The heart senses it. They're savage, the man on the team. All the strength and power of the enemy will be diverted to him, but his partners will provide assistance. All this was not so important. The trio would very soon enter the portal, which could not mean anything good, since only Gina and Glenn should enter there. It is unlikely that they will enter there so easily. There will definitely be enemies here who will try to take their place, but the banana skin will help them. This attack was the most effective, humiliation to the fullest. The trio lost from the beginning. Nothing will help them. They lost their chance to participate in this event. Now they only have to suck their fingers, since their place was taken and the train left. And again our hero, he surpasses himself. Having spent only a couple of banana skins, he destroyed the plans of this ridiculous team, and also disgraced him. Alerts have been made. Entry into the legendary event has been made. Entry to it will be closed for a while. These guys were very unlucky. They missed an event that opens once every 10 days. Luck was definitely not on their side. But the four-eyed man didn't think so at all. He thinks that they should wait until the heroes leave the portal, since they simply don't have enough level to pass. The savage was already completely desperate, since the thought that they would all be able to overcome this event could not leave his head, and their resources and equipment were crying. And the botanist had already thought through everything 10 steps ahead. His grin spoke only of one thing: he knows a lot only because he read the starting guide. There are only 5 events in the beginner village: courage, combat power, speed, ingenuity and luck. 4 of them were common. Only one could become a big problem for the player. This was a luck event, which only refers to the player's luck, and there are also enemies who need to pick up a weapon with the opposite attribute, as is the case with swamp creatures. Any monster or enemy can come across, they had different strengths, and in order to pass, it is necessary to kill 3 bosses, so to speak. The bespectacled man has already inspired the whole trio with hope of victory, since they still have a chance to get to the event. But our heroes will not succeed, since they have the wrong weapon. It's not for nothing that the four-eyed man has assembled a team for himself. As those 3 think, let them think so. The fire of passion, rage and fighting spirit burned in Jean and Glenn. They stood unshakable. All their reproaches were like wind in their faces. Meanwhile, Gina admired this strong enemy. She had never met anyone like her. The level was definitely not hers. She sensibly appreciated the design of this game. In her opinion, they approached its development with soul, but she does not know at all about where she really is. This is exactly what the swordsman was thinking about. She doesn't know at all that there are real demons here, and this whole world is considered the afterlife. He explained to her who would occupy what role. It was clear that Glenn would attack, her partner would provide support, and in case of victory, experience would be divided in half. Gina was counting on such conditions. She didn't even think differently, and it's very convenient for the swordsman. Well, with her equipment, you can declare war on anyone. After all, our rich beauty has too much money. The hero ordered her to follow the instructions, and he himself went into battle with this big guy. He understands that this sword is much more powerful than the previous one, while the fire attribute deals double damage to monsters with gold. The Titan tries to hit the swordsman with its powerful attacks, but he turns out to be many times faster. Such an opponent will be too tough for the monster. One swing of this sword and the creature on the levels above falls into pieces. Money in the underworld decides a lot. It was impossible to be distracted. A monster with the earth attribute was attacking from the side, a creature of incredible size. The legendary elite test lived up to its name. Glenn did not expect such a sudden enemy behind him. He had to think faster. A couple more seconds, and he would lose his head, and the big lizard would gnaw at his bones. He is not going to lose. Calling his partner, he asks her to send a thunder vine to the enemy so that she will send him to another hell. Gina doesn't hesitate, doesn't waste any time, and immediately sends a thunder vine at the earthen monster. Glenn takes the full blow of the ferocious monster, but it does not know what awaits it if it does not run away from here at that very second. And here are the consequences. They were not long in coming. A gigantic explosion occurred throughout the entire test. 2 of the 3 were defeated. The sand lizard fell into the trap of a thunder vine, thereby becoming a suicide bomber of the test. Thunder vine has the wood attribute, thereby dealing double damage to earth monsters. There is only one monster left. It should be the final one, but somehow it is nowhere to be seen. It feels like a trap, as if the heroes were led into a corner. Incredibly, a sudden attack, the next boss still appeared, but they did not have time to do anything against him. The 3rd demon, the attribute of water. How can such a beauty become a dangerous monster? A girl with her hands up to her elbows in the blood of the victims of this terrible game. Gina was completely late. Her partner was caught in the ice forever, yet he will always be cold to everyone. But the girl did not at all expect who she was fighting with. In front of her was the most experienced player, and she needed to be completely sure of his death. He always lives up to expectations. Pieces of ice are not a hindrance for him. Golden giants are no match for the main character. Lady Luck is definitely on his side, since the only armor of the earth that had a chance to dispel all the damage. Now the girl will become dessert. The armor also provides a boost against the water attribute. Even a regular punch becomes a guillotining attack. It was too easy. Glenn left a big hole in the demon, The Ice Princess melted before our eyes. All the monsters were defeated by the power of money and intelligence. Suddenly, a skeleton spirit appeared above their heads, notifying them that the test was completed and they could receive their rewards. Glenn and Gina did not know that they would be notified like this, and were very surprised to see a bald skeleton above their head. They gained a large amount of experience, and increased their levels by almost double. The trio outside do not even know what really awaits them, and around the corner lurks a bony old woman in a black hood and a sharp scythe. The rich princess also received her strengthening. Their progress is going faster than ever. They were given a lot of good equipment. The swordsman decided to take a fast blade for himself. It can be improved. The active ability is that it doubles the speed of the owner. He himself gave his comrade accessories, a crown, which is part of the set, and a ring, which gives the ability of invisibility. She was about to buy all the Phoenix equipment, but Glenn explained to her the harsh reality of this game. The items obtained in the challenge cannot be purchased, as they are limited. There are extra pumping points. Gina immediately decides to spend them on courage in order to increase her heroic strength. The swordsman understands this game, and does not think that pumping up one boost is useless. But she thought that swordsmen should increase their combat power and damage. Still, he guessed that his partner had no idea about leveling up in this game, as she was talking nonsense. Courage only enhances physical performance, health, strength, and the like. She needs to be agile, otherwise she will become an easy target for long-range weapons, for which she will have the highest level of strength. Everything was somehow incomprehensible to her. It was too difficult to understand whether strength or speed would be better. Glenn had already lost hope that he could drive all the concepts of pumping into her head, so he told her not to think about changing her phone. The time has come for Glenn to level up. He decided to improve his courage later, and now distribute it to less important skills for the purpose of balance. Attack, defense, and speed are perfectly balanced, yet our hero knows a lot about leveling up his character, just like an experienced player. Meanwhile, Gina with all her appearance demonstrated her superiority over her partner, since she is one level lower, but has more strength and protection, but her speed is 10 times less. They can't waste time arguing. They need to hurry somewhere. They've already wasted too much time. She was completely perplexed where they were going, what was suddenly bothering her comrade so much, why he always had everything planned, and right now they were affected by a sudden attack. Yet they forgot about it. Trio who tried to take the test. As expected, they planned a trap for their offenders and definitely wanted to take revenge on them for treating them so horribly. In such a period of time, there is no way these guys could have received a large boost of several levels, which leads to the fact that they have an 8-level monster in front of them. And here are the consequences. They did not think that they would be able to complete the test. Having become stronger, they fought back against this trio. The new weapon was amazing. Increased speed, gigantic strength and power, everything you need for a deadly blade. Gina greatly admired this gigantic force, since he was equal in power to her, but the speed was much greater. The savage still cannot believe that their weapon was cut with one swing of the sword. The second one didn't even dare to think that 4th level players were capable of this. Only they had not yet seen their experience counter. Here he was, Gina was level 7, Glenn was level 8. Now they understood who they were up against. Luck was not on the side of this team. The savage had already shed many tears. He saw hope only in their third partner, who was confident that these absurdities would emerge empty-handed from the test. Only he was already running so far in fear that the horizon completely covered him. But he turned out to be the way we had imagined him. The guys didn't expect such a betrayal, so what should they do now except get paid for their insolence? Glenn could still show mercy to these weaklings, but they were the first to decide to show their fangs. Now nothing is stopping him from sending the trio to the waiting menu. Whether there was any point in running away or begging for mercy is unknown, but one thing is clear, they will definitely get what they deserve. Slow Princess Gina orders these cowards to stop as they must answer for their actions. Her words had no meaning for these madmen. They did not listen to her, but the swordsman was much faster so that they could escape. Now she has a choice. He gives her a chance to continue to follow him, or to go her own way. It's up to her to decide. She blushed again, because she was very embarrassed to accept that she wanted to go with him. But she couldn't refuse and still agreed. But he didn't even listen to her. Glenn knew in advance that she would agree, or he decided everything for her himself. And now they need to go to the Peach Valley. She was incredibly angry with this scoundrel. She wanted to pour out her soul to him, but he didn't listen to her at all. Even here he dares to mock her speed, as he is about to slow down his legs so that she can keep up with him. In this case, she decided to answer him with a transformation. Apparently it would be something incredible. She would not buy only the worst equipment. The new suit will be spectacular for sure. The strong side of humanity will certainly lose all the fortitude at the sight of it. These robes were created only to attract attention. There is no other way to call it, yet she can be praised for such efforts. She was sure that now it would be he who would have to chase after her, since the speed had increased by 15%. His gaze immediately fell on the most open place, but he didn't show it, and decided to find out from her why she bought the killer's equipment when she herself is a swordsman. Her intentions were initially completely different. She wanted with all her heart to attract the attention of her partner to her magnificent beauty. Suddenly she realized that such provocations did not work for this bastard, since he was too stupid. He continued to tell her that she could take much better objects, and this suit could be a good thing for a magician, but not for a swordsman. She was furious. Glenn had managed to piss her off. She had no desire to have a conversation with him. The hero understood what she wanted from him, what she wanted to achieve. Gina wanted to seduce him with all her heart, but nothing succeeded. If the old Glenn had been in his place, she would have won. But she didn't even have a chance to seduce our hero, since he saw much more. Meanwhile, they were heading to the Peach Valley in full swing. Rumors spread that there were a lot of resources and equipment there, but that was not what drew the swordsman there. Gina tapped her heel, and at that very second they arrived at their destination. Peach Valley is truly beautiful. Pink petals are in the air, giant triangular mountains that are covered with a white veil of fog. It was here that the demon General King was supposed to arrive for the harvest, but Gina could no longer tolerate such opportunities to obtain so many resources. But Glenn doesn't care at all about his partner's opinion. He decided to delay time. The beauty immediately began to be indignant, since many players could take apart all the most valuable things, and they would be left with an empty cart. But she did not know the hidden intention and should not know. Besides, there were too many high-level enemies in Peach Valley that wouldn't even lift a finger to kill them. She did not understand her comrade's intentions at all. Doesn't he want to get this equipment? She is very angry with him. But the fact is that their weapons are random, which means they won't be able to use them to their full potential. And during the time they got here, he didn't have time to pick up good items. She was not at all sure of his words, but she knew one thing for sure: there must be a store here where she could buy something for herself. As it turned out, the store was right at the foot of the mountain. In her opinion, they were very lucky, but she was the only one spending money. But the bastard swordsman knew in advance that there would be shops here, otherwise they would not have taken this road. Just a couple of moments, and they had already arrived at the local merchant. Gina immediately explained to him what she wanted, just to buy out his entire trade. The merchant turned out to be a skeleton, who stood dead in front of his store, waiting for customers. All his items shone like the most precious treasure. He was very happy with new customers. As expected, such a famous place will have high prices, and the items here are some of the best, like Peach Valley. Glenn didn't expect such prices for goods. A regular fire spell costs 4 times less than here. This infuriated the skeleton. They only had 10 minutes to look at the items, although Gina already with all her heart wanted to buy everything at once. At this point, Glenn, out of spite for this greedy merchant, decided to buy a couple of items, otherwise he would decide to split his skull. Meanwhile, the rich princess decided to look at the balance in the game to make sure that she had enough to buy 100 more of these stores. Her balance has aged both of them. The merchant has never seen such wealth, and on her wallet there are hundreds of stores like his. While shopping in Peach Valley, the players were not patiently waiting for a certain event. Just here the harvest of the demon general was about to begin. Surely these people have been waiting for this event for a long time. Many of them have a lot of everyday worries, and they are delaying the test. And here was the first sign of the beginning of the harvest. The ground began to shake underfoot. An incredible danger was already approaching. King arrived. Such an enemy may be beyond their strength, since only with his appearance he glowed with a light green flame. The greatest danger of their lives fell from the sky onto their heads. The ground beneath it created cracks, and the air became heavier. They didn't care about his strength. He demonstrated all his power with all his appearance, but it had no effect on them. These madmen will only be able to realize who they have attacked when they are on the verge of death, or have lost a couple of their allies. Just a couple of swings and moments, and most of the players are lying in the stands, where no one will cheer for their victory. The power was incredible. One attack from this monster among mortal people, and they lost their chance to win. The players could not believe that such a strong demon appeared on the first level. They arrived in the trap of one monster. Glenn had to hurry, otherwise King would destroy every opponent. But with each attack there are fewer and fewer players on the battlefield, their bodies scatter in different directions, whether something went wrong on the Ferris wheel. People were not so stupid as to attack such a strong demon in close combat. They decided to throw all their equipment at him. Yes, they were not stupid, but this is unlikely to help them, since such a weapon certainly will not harm him. As it turned out, King will not allow such weaklings to attack him behind his back, since he irritates him like the wind in his face. The girls shook their knees, blushed, and wiped tears from their cheeks. They were sure that they would die in this battle. People couldn't bet anything against this monster. But really, why should developers do such tests? Apparently nothing will help the participants of the event. King decided to use his incredible ability, which takes away almost all the players' health. This talent tore off the clothes of his victims. Such a large-scale attack and with such power, the monster was too dangerous for them. The madmen were very afraid of such power. All their clothes were torn, their health was on the brink. From this, the furious king only flared up, became covered in the hellish flames of inferno. Even a circle of white chalk on the floor could not protect him from such a monster. All his pressure evaporated the same second as a strange blue ball appeared under his nose, again a useless attack from the humans. Incredibly, this is real power. Someone managed to hide the devil General King himself, who a second ago was wreaking havoc in the ice. Still, our heroes arrived on time. Gina gave these people a chance to escape. Finally, the people fled. A little more and this creature will get out of its bonds, and Glenn has not yet arrived at all. And here is our king in all its glory, such an ice crust that was destroyed in a matter of seconds. Coins fell from this bastard, it only made him angrier. He will be in a complete rage like no one has ever seen. And here is our hero in golden armor. He shone brighter than any jewelry. Not a single noble metal could compare with such radiance. King really wanted to find this impudent person who dared to attack him with this ice ball. But he doesn't know at all where the sudden danger awaits him. The holy power split the demon general into two equal parts. This was the energy of the sun that struck the great and terrible king. He was a ray of sunshine for people, parting the clouds with his light. He embraced all the darkness and looked at the world as the Creator intended. Hope appeared in the eyes of people. They saw this hero, who looked like an unknown rich man. The armor alone cost more than 10,000 coins, and the sword costs 10 times more. Gina is too rich for this game. King was very angry with Glenn, yet they would not be able to make friends, since he did not like this ambush. But this time the swordsman prepared adequately. He must finish him quickly, since King can recover. He did not give his opponent a chance. Each blow became stronger and stronger. The battle became heated. King could no longer answer his opponent. The new opponent was much stronger than the previous ones. What would he do against him? At the moment, Glenn is only throwing blow after blow. It is unlikely that anyone will be able to resist such pressure. The players opened their mouths wide. They could not believe that our hero was inflicting a giant combo of attacks, each already equal to double damage, as a player on the first level of the underworld was capable of. Will this really be a grand end for King? He will die without inflicting even a drop of damage on the most powerful enemy in his life. The swordsman understands that this blade is truly strong, but its power cannot be fully revealed, yet if it saves so many lives then the price will be justified. At that very second, the situation took a different turn. For some time King became immortal. His health was suddenly blocked. The hero has had enough fun. The demon general thinks so and delivers a strong blow that should send Glenn's soul to this world. After all, he is not a weakling to simply take blows and give a strong answer that shakes the earth. Still, King managed to seriously wound the hero. If he had not had such armor, he would have lost his life without starting the battle. The survivors are confident in the swordsman's victory, since the armor on him reduces a good portion of the damage. Nevertheless, a person with money is capable of a lot. This bastard did not allow him to be defeated so easily. It is clear that the golden hero would be angry if such an enemy came across to newcomers. He was confused. But suddenly useful information came into his head. King had only one weak point, it was his knee. The fire general was very angry at this situation. He clearly did not want to meet such a strong player also in these expensive robes. Glenn ran with full hope of victory. He accelerated to a speed that was equal to lightning. But it was not enough for such a monster. And King himself will not just stand and watch as he is attacked by some rich man who dared to challenge the demon general himself. Both were on the verge. Glenn received an almost mortal wound. One more strong attack and he would go to the world of dreams. There are only 5 seconds left before the ability recharges. And this general doesn't have much time left. Only King read it like an open book, because he knew that the enemy was going to do something to finish him off. How self-confident. The guys noticed that there were only 5 seconds left before King's unique ability was restored. Now they are not so confident in the hero's victory. But suddenly he decided to do something. He grabbed his blade, which accelerates him by 100%. Thereby he will have time to finish off the enemy in the last moments. There were only 3 seconds left. The fiery general had already taken an attack stance. He did not want to give this insolent a chance. Yes, King did not have time. He lost at the most inconvenient moment for him. He lost, and this cannot be denied. He went through everything against all odds. The enemy was much stronger than himself. But he surpassed himself, acted instantly and knew the enemy's weak point in advance. He wounded him right in the knee, on which he bowed. He killed the demon general, who was respected with all his heart. He was dealt the final blow to his weakest point. He still couldn't understand how he managed to accelerate so much. There were only 5 seconds left to win, and he exceeded his speed and took first place. Before the death of the enemy, Glenn explained the secret of this speed. The whole secret was hidden in the blade, which made it possible to make a strong jerk. The survivors rejoiced. Their hero defeated the strongest monster, thereby saving them all. One bad weather after another, King did not die completely, which means that he will come again, because he suspects our hero of knowing too much, otherwise no one could know about the weak point. Yes, this was a real problem. A new danger was waiting for them around the corner. As soon as this general told the Lord about everything, Glenn would not escape trouble. Everyone was very happy about the victory. Only the perverted swordsman felt differently, since he understood that an incredible danger would soon overtake them, and he needed to get rid of it at the root. He grabbed Gina's hand and pulled her along with him. Suddenly he really needed her, and besides, it was only her for everyone. The beauty did not understand at all what was happening here. What was the reason for such haste? The beautiful, magnificent, rich princess was perplexed by such a rush, as if her idol had broken loose. She definitely won't hear the answer. But his head is full of thoughts. He needed to try to get rid of King before he reached the king of hell. And from Gina he only needs to find a secluded place so that she can quickly kill him, since he wants to get into the body of the demon lord. He took off his golden armor and was completely ready for death. But Gina did not understand the reason for what suddenly happened. But now Glenn couldn't explain. Time was too short. He asked his best partner to call the hospital and find out about the condition of his brother Woody, so that he could get back on his feet after King was killed. The swordsman asked her to meet her at night in 3 days in the rookie village, and now she just needs to pierce him with the blade. She still couldn't decide how she would kill her beloved partner, who had done so much for her, but he himself had already sat on the blade. His determination was unshakable. Such an enemy cannot be wished on anyone. The beauty could not hold this sword in her hands. It fell from her hands since the life of an ally, comrade, and beloved lay on it. Gina grabbed her mouth with both hands, sighed heavily and watched for a long time as her comrade's body crumbled into particles. He told her that this pain would never compare to the torment in reality, so she needn't worry. He associates this pain with that which is comparable to the removal of energy, whether it is being sucked out of the soul. No matter how he managed to inhabit the body of the Lord of Hell, now he has a chance to get out of this terrible situation. The eyelids became heavy like steel balls. The energy went outside the body. After a while, he wakes up at the feet of the lovely Amelie, right on her tender legs. Heavenly pleasure. It is unknown how many tears our beauty shed while this bastard was calmly sleeping on the lap of a charming maid. But what is her joy from the fact that her master, His Majesty, woke up and pleased her with his kind look. Amelie was very embarrassed by her master, and he instantly removed his head from her lap. No one even dared to dream of being in the place of our hero. Glenn thanked his maid, offered his hand and apologized for the inconvenience. She didn't want to make Glenn guilty of this at all. Amelie wanted to demonstrate with all her appearance that her master was not guilty of anything. His head was bursting at the seams, but Amelie was very worried about him. All this time she wanted to call a doctor, because she didn't like the fact that the Lord was falling unconscious. Suddenly he became interested in where the very well was located, in which monsters should be restored after death. She could not believe that the bishop apologized to her and helped her get up. She had never before seen such concern on his part. But she likes just such a gentleman more. After all, he is very friendly to her. But his behavior is very strange. One of the demon generals came out of the reincarnation well just a couple of minutes ago, throwing out vile words. It was King. According to the mask, he was simply sure that someone dared to tell about his secret, about his weak point. It was not for nothing that he was so angry. Everything was simply terrible. The demon general went to his emperor. This could not be allowed, since the hero would immediately be exposed. Meanwhile, the dwarf boatman, who was already selecting the best transport from his assortment for King, the gentleman urgently needed to go to the Eastern Emperor. Just for this he was going to find the fastest animal in this place. This creature must definitely be the best in the world of transport in this dimension. After all, this dragon is capable of conquering the waves of the hellish seas at gigantic speeds. The dwarf was very happy with his master, and helping him was a real happiness for him. The boatman wished a happy journey to his client, and he immediately went to his emperor. Not here, but Glenn and Amelie arrived at the best moment. While King had not yet managed to sail far, the hero's heart was beating stronger and stronger. Even so, he is not going to let go of his beloved King, who constantly puts a spoke in his wheels. But the general was too angry to waste time on such stupidity. Only now a strong attack was approaching him, which he could no longer avoid. This strength, this power, they surpassed everything that is around. The earth shook under such pressure. They are capable of creating cataclysms with one wave of their hand, which is demonstrated here. After this, King will not be happy with anyone. He spat salt water. He came out of the liquid all wet. It was very disadvantageous for Glenn if the demon emperors found out about his double game, since he would lose his life instantly. Noi wanted to object to something, but Amelie will always find a way to deal with this impudent person. The big king was outraged by what was happening. A second ago his path was interrupted for an unknown reason by our hero while he was trying to get to the emperor. Glenn knows what to push to get King to talk, or rather, to make him guilty of underestimating the ruler. King noticed one strange thing. He urgently needs to run to the emperor and report to him about everything that happened. The swordsman tried with all his appearance to show that going to the emperor was not a good decision at all, since it could greatly undermine the authority of the Lord of Hell. King, without thinking twice, justifies himself. You see how such a nonentity can look down on him or undermine authority. Amelie again got involved in negotiations. She really wants to help her master so that he, without much trouble, takes his highest place in hell. Meanwhile, King really wanted to escape from here. Since minutes were counting, they had to hurry, otherwise great danger was approaching them. King could be the perfect guinea pig to test out some discreet and inconspicuous weapon that fits in a pocket without inconvenience. But suddenly something went wrong. The smallest weapon in the arsenal of the Lord of Hell, who does not even know the charms of a hidden killer. King could not help but notice such a strong weapon on the horizon. Now he will definitely understand that everything is not clean here, and will report to the emperor. Definitely, the general noticed this gigantic weapon, which greatly horrified him. He could not understand what his lord was up to, what their master's thought was. Glenn's actions were all ordinary. He simply went out to test his weapon on the demon general and attacked him. One small swing and this monster from hell, the demon general, assistant to the Eastern Emperor King, was defeated by a deadly weapon. The power of this blade is amazing. It is capable of stealing energy instead of the victim's blood, thus restoring its entire battery. King could still speak. He was too determined for any lord to dare to kill him. He was simply obliged to report this to his Eastern Emperor. In fact, Glenn can't stand this freak for a long time. Every time he shows behavior like a child, as if he was offended in childhood and had his candy taken away. What is the willpower? One thing was definitely magnificent about him. He plowed the blue sea with a gigantic wound in his chest. but continued to swim while the salt water cauterized the wound. The swordsman didn't expect such impudence. Where did he get so much strength? How did he manage to piss off the whole team like that? But even here no one can help him. A magical rope of extraordinary length descends from the heavens, and now King definitely won't be able to cope. The last minutes of his life remain for him. That giant sickle of the ruler is capable of finally taking the soul of a person or a monster. There will be no restoration. What to do now? His non-human pressure was prevented by a strange rope that makes his eyes roll back. Incredible strength. Amelie executed King in front of the ruler. Glenn clearly did not expect such strength from her, since she could not always show such a result. He glanced at her in surprise, or rather, he was confused, because he did not understand the source of such powers. Amelie was charming, a cruel devil in the body of a beautiful maid who carries dinners, arranges negotiations and helps her master. Just her appearance makes the world a better place. She was very embarrassed, because she took King's murder for herself. Although our hero, the swordsman Glenn, should have done this, Amelie believes that she should have been punished for this. Meanwhile, the bishop thanked her and said that her help was very necessary. His gratitude alone put her in an incredible state. Her lord never praised her, but here she was so happy that her knees were already shaking. Glenn is not at all sure that he will be able to hold himself in this body for a long time, while he is still here. And the demon of destruction King is dead. The hero can collect as much as possible. Right now he is entering the developer's office and does not let his Amelia in. He was looking for a truly important thing, information that would help a real hero in the future to defeat the final boss of this game. You need to find all the most valuable things, what events will happen in the future, the most powerful weapons, how to get the best equipment. These are the most valuable questions. By that time, the heroine was very worried that suddenly her master decided to kill the demon of destruction. Besides, he did not warn in any way. Before it was completely different. The behavior of the murder was completely different. Pictures of how she fought in a minute battle with King pop up in her head. Giant forces collided at those negotiations. Did the Lord of Hell begin to treat his maid much better than before? Apparently she was becoming very close to him. She kept thinking and thinking that Glenn might treat her this way because he values her very much. Still, the hero managed to find something interesting. In this folder the real ruler wrote down all the most important things. It's incredible that the design of this game was completely handled by the main developer. The swordsman understands that the Lord definitely knows a lot about how the game should look in order to attract a person's attention. But suddenly he notices what is called a ghostly wave. This really surprised our hero. Is it really a new event? It turns out that the 4 emperors will be insatiable. They will need the energy of people, which he tries to restrain so that it does not become unnecessary. Which is precisely what follows, that the ghosts will begin to attack the players endlessly. The next attack will overtake the players on September 9th and will last 6 hours. There will be a lot of monsters. But the developer was going to not warn anyone so that no one would group together. This is the harsh reality. How lucky Glenn was to find this folder, since the real ruler wants to remove the barrier in the village of newcomers when the time comes, and later kill them in the game. Something is definitely wrong here. This should have happened today. The main thing is that there are no more new terrible plans. Our hero did not like this, since very soon the players could find themselves in the greatest danger, and only he could save them. Glenn decided to leave the body of the demon lord. Amelie heard this strange rumble in the office and was very scared. She was very worried and decided to enter, even if no one allowed her. Apparently she thought a lot about herself. And here is the real ruler. His gaze did not even stand close to our hero. It was the fire of rage that burned in him. Amelie was sure that her master had fallen unconscious again, and decided to help him get to his feet. But suddenly she expects the most terrible answer to hers. Help! He throws her hand to the side, which could even injure her. He was furious. The king of hell did not allow her to touch her. She will be shocked, since in front of her she sees 2 monsters in one body. The beauty realized that she was behaving inappropriately. But earlier he treated her better. He could take her hand and thank her according to her merits. But now she sheds tears on the floor. Still, she apologizes to the gentleman, and he shakes dust from his shoulders, as if she were an empty place for him. Only he noticed that same folder. He hadn't visited it for a long time, but it was open. Something was definitely wrong here. Meanwhile, Glenn was talking about the fact that he could sit in the body of the Lord, but in the end he was thrown back to the village of newcomers. He needed to send out very important information to all players that they could die if they entered the game. All in all, this level of difficulty is very good, since you can earn a triple part of the experience. This is very good for a single player. The most important thing was that he needed to get the best position in the battle, and then he needed to adapt to the situation. This slope will be ideal for defending against enemies who should be 3 times stronger than before. The swordsman saw that the sky was turning bloody red. Everything was about to begin soon. The main thing was that the players did not become victims of this event. Meanwhile, the monsters were already attacking. This night promises to be exciting, which is scary to even imagine. The hero looked at all this from the top of the mountain, and would really like people to be able to defeat these monsters and not be afraid to suddenly meet them. At the foot of the mountain some kind of horror was happening. Explosions, deaths, blood. Monsters were losing their lives over and over again. The monkey demons came under a barrage of attacks from some survivor of this horror. It was another girl. Her name was Moore and she had a fire machine gun in the game. The speed was also low, but the ranged combat was at the highest level. Glenn lost the strength in his tongue from the fact that he managed to meet a shooter among the archers and crossbowmen. This girl was able to attract his attention. The corpses of monsters lay like walls. Explosions and shots killed the monsters one by one. No one could withstand the barrage of bullets. Moore was very afraid, as the demons broke loose and began to attack until their lives were lost. Glenn realizes that she made a huge mistake and that she did not decide to change her position and that this did not play into her hands, since she was driven into a dead end. Good positioning and discipline are all you need to live in this game, but she drove herself into a corner, and her death is only a matter of time. After all, she will be squeezed into the corner from all sides. A machine gun is a very rare weapon, so he could just walk away and not help this girl, yet he decided he needed to team up with her. In the meantime, he decided to check out his rewards after the Peach Valley. His level rose all the way to level 15, it was incredible. Of course, he would also like to receive good equipment, but in the end he received nothing, since he was too arrogant. It was impossible to despair. But the system definitely did not expect that the demon of Destruction King could be defeated. Let it be so, since there are still 10,000 coins that he can spend usefully. And now the time has come to help that same girl who will be killed any minute, and he looks at how much money and equipment he received. She clearly needed urgent help, the enemies were on her heels, and she could not shoot back, since she was driven into a corner. But Glenn is not so simple that a little fragile girl will die in this horror. And it is he who descends like holy lightning that will punch holes in all opponents. It was great. No one will ever be able to repeat such an attack, since everyone is too inexperienced. It looked like something. We've already seen this before. Again he saves a beauty whom he wants to recruit into his team, and she's already hooked on him. After this, Moore considers him very cool. Literally God fell on her head and saved the poor woman. They looked at the monkeys. The strange thing was that even after death they were shaking or moving. This was written in the Lord's folder. The swordsman covered the girl with his hands so that she wouldn't stick her head out again. The chimpanzees have become brutal again. Real monsters who belong only in hell, boiling in the flames of the inferno. He realizes that the situation is too dangerous and asks Moore to grab him tightly, and they go upstairs. The monsters did not expect such a move at all. They all dived headfirst into the ground, and their prey flew skyward. Thanks to the rope, they will rise in a matter of seconds. Again Glenn thought through everything in advance. The chimpanzees were furious as their prey escaped right under their noses, some without even realizing it. Moore was breathing heavily after such and such, she was almost pinched. But a hero came who saved her, her idol. The machine gunner didn't understand at all how they took off. He can fly, what equipment he uses, what the secret is. Everything was hidden in one rope for 3 coins. Again he was ready for anything. Moore considered this the highest level of cool. Again those eyes of admiration. She was very glad to meet such a smart and strong ally. The swordsman explains all his strength by the fact that he is very careful, and he managed to get to this event and take a good position because he collected resources and saw what was happening in the area and decided to climb to the highest place. She was very inspired by this mentality. She couldn't believe that she had met such a kind savior. But he shouldn't mention that he is able to move into the body of the Lord of Hell and draw information from there. Once again, the girl's forbidden tricks, snuggling closer, rubbing a finger on the chest and asking for everything. Of course, Glenn will not refuse. Just like this is why he saved her. She had too many questions. She wanted to know all the tricks and ways to get such a high level as our hero. He decided to upgrade his abilities to gain his unique skill. As he promised, he eventually strengthened his attention-getting abilities. He managed to acquire a strong bloodlust skill, which our hero is now capable of. This ability was good, it even interested our hero. While Glenn is reasoning, Moore is shouting at the top of his voice that a gigantic enemy offensive is coming towards them. Incredibly, these were ghost warriors. They noticed them and apparently the system wants to get rid of them. These ghosts were once warriors who died with valor, but now they wander the underworld and attack players in droves. Their general, he unites them all, and when this happens they all attack together, which is good. While they are at the top of the mountain, the system will strive with all its might to finish them off here. But what will happen if they change position? By that time, Moore was conducting large-scale fire on the enemies so that they would not even think about rising. An incredible barrage of patrons. This is the level of many millennia. Now he met with old men on horses. These are the consequences of their stupid attack head-on. No ambush. It's worth shooting them and in the end they won't be able to cope with anything. Glenn was pleasantly surprised that the girl was able to surprise him, since she easily defended him and herself. Incredibly, a hail of arrows was heading towards them. Even Glenn would not be able to dodge this. There were too many of them. They lost their vigilance, as they relied on the power of the machine gun, and as a result, they will now lose if they sit in one place. The barrage of attacks from the enemies was also amazing. The arrows caused enough damage to the heroes to call these ghosts weaklings. Behind everyone were archers who attacked while the infantry fought their way up. On top of everything else, they had catapults. The situation was getting worse and worse. There was nowhere to go. Ghosts individually could not deliver anything, but when there is a whole army with infantry, archers and catapults, this is completely different. Moore finally realized that her machine gun did not reach the archers. They had to come up with something. He has been thinking for a long time about what is best for them to do. They have already made many mistakes. The main thing is not to make more. But the best solution was that they should not be here. It was better to find another place and fight the enemies there. The general was already climbing the mountain. The infantry was making its way through a barrage of bullets. The worst thing is that the ghosts have already loaded the catapults, and the heroes are still on the top of the mountain. And here is the first salvo of boulders. Where should they go in such a situation? Only a tactical retreat. Now Glenn will not let his guard down. He grabs the machine gunner and takes her to another place. In an instant they rush through all the enemies. Not a single ghost expected this. The swordsman was very decisive, easily taking the best measures against these annoying ghosts. Now they switch roles. Glenn calls on his great sword and is going to cut off the head of the general of the ghost army. All enemies should run at breakneck speed to avoid being hit by Glenn, as he is now playing seriously. The general has no idea what awaits him. In an instant he will lose his head for the second time in 2 lives. As expected, one moment has passed. One swing of the blade and one greatest hero who will triumph everywhere. The warriors were shaking. Their general was brutally dealt with. No one else would be able to give the best orders in their lives. She admires her savior time after time, since he is too smart and strong. But suddenly the ghost general decides to come to life again, and attack only without a horse. The general, out of rage, led all his troops to attack Glenn, but it is unlikely that they will succeed. There was a big chase after them. Everyone wants to take revenge on this impudent man, who decided to kill the general while there were many of his soldiers around. They ran day and night. In the thickets of the forest the silhouettes of demons were visible, whose shadows terrified them to the point of shaking their bones. Suddenly the hero had a brilliant idea in his head to clear out the dungeon. Moore did not at all understand the motive for fighting the underground dragon, but everything was clear. The monsters would constantly be reborn, which means the dragon could be killed several times. There must be a giant underground dragon here that they will torment until the test is over. In the darkness he has already shown. Tonight he can receive all the experience he has gained and triple it, thereby receiving an incredible amount of all the best. She trembled with this kind of thinking in mind, as if she was in ecstasy, since this is the first time she meets such players who are looking for profit rather than a way to survive. But suddenly we are distracted from everything by the fact that Glenn begins to shine. A teleportation retinue was used on him. Moore was in a state of courage, did not understand anything. His every movement was magic for her. And here is our beautiful Gina. How long has it been since he saw her? And here she falls from heaven, a goddess. She fell in the most inconvenient way. But the important thing is that the village of newcomers was filled with ghosts that could not be killed, and the rest of the players died because they were ambushed. But he was distracted by something more dangerous. After all, they were in the dragon's lair, which means something was already approaching them. Incredibly, the new enemy is a certain beauty, like a goddess, hair like white silk, an hourglass waist, and probably incredible strength and power.